Welcome to NixTrainz. This is where mentors can help modelers build. Thanks so much for coming. Hope you enjoy the show. Got some great people for you to meet tonight and talk with. If you're new to the show, please go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe. You'll get an email sent to you at the email address that you subscribe. And if you'll confirm that that's your email address, then in the future, you'll get all of the login information for all of our shows. And you'll also be eligible for the door prizes that we have. We have a door prize tonight that's being offered by Coastmans Scenic Products. And the owner of the company is our featured modeler this evening, and he'll be here to talk to you about the door prize as well as his company and his own modeling. And I think you'll really enjoy meeting him. I really like Roger a lot and appreciate his participation this evening. To win the door prize tonight, you have to be a subscriber to our website, number one. You have to either watch the show live or see the show on a video, on our video on YouTube later, so that you can get the code that you're going to need to verify that you saw the show and send that to me in an email. After the show is over, you have 24 hours from that point to send an email to me, Jim Kellow, numeric 1, JIMKELLOW, numeric 1, at gmail.com, and include in that both your mailing address for the prize and also the code that you will need that will be stated later on this show, and it'll also be included in the video of the show, and you'll have to include that code in the email that you send me. The email address that you use to send me the email must be the same email address that we have on file that you use to subscribe to NixTrainz Modeling. That verifies you're a subscriber and that you watch the show. So you'll need the email to send me an email using the email that you use to subscribe to NixTrainz Modeling, our website. And you'll need to include the code that I will give you later that's mentioned in the show. I wish everybody good luck. I hope you enjoy it. We have a door prize tonight. We have a door prize next Saturday, and we have a door prize for the following Wednesday. So if a company is out there that would like to contribute a door prize, it'll be the following Wednesday after that. Before we need one. Nick Santo is the one that's giving the door prize for the 28th of August. And I really do appreciate this one for the September 1st show. David Rarick, who just completed the build along of Paul Egret's card model of the engine terminal, is going to donate that model. He did it in HO. And he'll ship it to the winner of the door prize on the September the 1st show. I really appreciate David doing that. I think that's a real contribution from him, and I thanked him so much when he told me that he wanted to do this for us. So let me talk a little bit about the upcoming build-alongs. Rick and Marie Hunter start September the 1st. They're 81-foot trestle. And before I go any further, let me make sure that you understand that I'm not going to go into great detail on all of these, but all of the detail, the discounts that are available to modelers who are going to buy the models to build along on the show, all of that information, what the model is, when it starts, the discounts, how to order it, all of that information is on our website under the My Bills section. Under each one of these individual My Bills. But Rick and Marie Hunter start September the 1st on their 81-foot trestle. Al Collins, by the way, is also offering a discount on his ultimation equipment for that build. If you buy the kit from Rick, his Hunterline kit that he and Marie are going to build, then you're eligible for Al's discount for his ultimation equipment. The 22nd of September, Martin Breckbiel MMR is going to start building a Leadville Designs maintenance of way car. On October the 13th, Jim Murphy is going to start building a LaBelle HO business car. The 16th of October, Bill Davis is going to build a rail scale tobacco barn. And this is available in all scales, N, HO, S, and O. And then November the 6th, Dave Schultz is going to start building the All-Nation waffle side boxcar. So I hope that you'll get involved in one or more of those. And I know that you'll really enjoy it because we've got some excellent builders. For your information, I also signed up our first build along for 2022. And that's a company called Yarmouth Model Works. And the owner of the company, Pierre Oliver, will be the one on the show doing the build along for that January 2022 build. Let me mention this. If you're a modeler and you'd like to do a build along on the show, I'm booking them now, as I say, early 2022. So if you'd like to do one, please let me know, because it'll probably be toward the end of January that I'll want to do a second one. And then we'll be in February of next year. So you have my email. Please send me an email or call me. My telephone number is on our website. And we'll talk about what model you would like to do the build along with. You're a manufacturer, same goes. Either you can build your own model or we'll get another modeler on the show to build a model, but I just need to know that you're interested and want to participate in the show. Our next My Build is going to be the 22nd of September. Chris Corse will be back and he'll be running that one. During the summer, Jeremy Wyatt filled in for Chris and did a great job. We had a great show of participants in the My Build last show, and I hope that we'll have even better turnout for the one September the 22nd. As I say, Chris Corse will be the one doing that one, and all you'll have to do is send an email to Chris telling that you want to participate, a photo of your model, caption what the photo shows, and your name. So please participate, because we got an awful lot of additional views on YouTube based on that show. And I think it's partly because of the work that Jeremy did in the My Build for that show. If you've got a modeling question that we can try to answer, please go to our website again. And there's a form on the website that you can fill out and ask your question. The only stupid question is the one you don't ask. It doesn't make any difference what it is. We have a special segment on the show tonight based on a question that was asked by a modeler. And that modeler said, can you have somebody come on the show and show us how to take a very inexpensive car and turn it into something that we could be proud of to run on our model railroad. And that's what you're going to see James Schultz do tonight. I think the car that he's going to build, I think he paid $1 or $2 for, so it doesn't get much more inexpensive than that. Now I'd like to turn to quick tips for this evening. And we have a guest, Phil Edholm, who's going to do our quick tip. So Phil, welcome.
Thank you much. I'm going to share a screen here and we will get started. So very quickly, what I'm going to do is talk about a tool I built that is 3D printed, but is kind of the simplest 3D print you could ever do, but is designed really to solve a specific problem. So this happened, I had a building I was building, and I decided I wanted to try building a building as an acrylic frame. This is a removable building. You can see it on the right for a module. The problem with the modules is if you ship them in trailers, they get beat up. If you put them inside in a van or something like that, this is essentially 2 modules that are each 3.5 by 6 feet, take up a huge amount of room. So the idea was to make the structures removable, but at the same time, I decided I'd make it heavy duty. So anyway, I ended up deciding I had to add wood, and I added on the right, you can see some scribe siding. The problem with the scribe siding is you can't use what I normally use, which is the edge of a saw, a razor saw, to actually do wood graining. So I was actually in a session we had on the West Coast where Frank Markovich made a comment that he was doing wood weathering on a kit, and he said I had a wood graining tool. And I said, well, what was that? And he said, oh, it was some X-Acto knives we glued together with epoxy and made a holder for her. And he said actually his son had made it up. So I thought, well, that sounds like an interesting thing to 3D print. So this is a very simple 3D printed holder that holds 7 X-Acto blades. You can see this is kind of an end view over here, and they just slide in there. And it actually uses a piece of filament right here through a hole to actually lock them in place. There's a little thumb lock, little thumb positioner up here. It actually turned out I made this a little wider than the blades. You kind of have to force them in. So they're pretty good on height, but it's a little wider, which turns out is interesting because the blade spacing kind of varies and it actually will wiggle a little bit, which gives you some kind of variable lines. This is actually the design. It was done in FreeCAD, and you see it's a really simple design. It took about 10-15 minutes to do. But the result is that if you look here, you can kind of see on the right is the kind of raw lumber, siding. And on the left, you can see this very quick wood grain you can get into it, or very reasonably quickly. And you can see some of the kind of straight on pictures. So from perspective is you have a big building in either an O scale or maybe a larger scale and you want to wood grain it, it's a great way. You can use it both forward and it makes more thinner lines that look more like graining, or you can scrape it and it actually makes thicker lines that look more like damaged wood. So this was kind of some of the results and kind of the outcomes of it is you can see on the left, kind of, I think you can kind of see the graining here. I don't know how well it comes through, but kind of graining the whole building. So I'll go ahead and put in the chat links for both or not links, I'll put the files for both the FreeCAD file, but also for an STL that you can just print. If you have a filament printer, it takes about, I think, half an hour to print. It doesn't take that long to print. So that was it. That was the quick tip for the evening. Any questions?
Well, thank you so much, Phil. That was great. Really do appreciate you filling in this evening and sharing that information with us. Now I'd like to start our special segments for this evening. The first one is James Schultz. And James, I really do appreciate you doing this because this was requested by a modeler on the show. And I think you're going to be a big help to him. So thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, thank you. So we'll step right into it here. So as he mentioned before, you can buy cars at shows, eBay, get them really cheap. This one was $1. It's not much to it. Lots of molded on detail. And this is all stuff we're going to take off. I got another car we'll be working on here. And this is another one I bought for, I think it was $7 or $8. Big flat car, 53 foot. So we'll just start right in with this. Now, tools I use, we can start off. It's a number 11 flat blade. Very easy, very simple to use. You can come in and just start removing detail with it. And it'll just push right on through. You can just rock it back and forth and details start to remove. This is a patience game. It takes a while, but if you want to, build a car that you've always wanted, and you can find one at a show that's very cheap, this is a very simple way of doing that. So I also was given the idea of using these rounded blades, and these are X-Acto number 11, and they got a nice rounded edge to them, really sharp, but you can come in and you can actually start scraping the details off with this blade. So you get the initial big details off, and then you can scrape this right down to the surface. You can see how it takes it right off. So that is gone. Now you're probably wondering, now we got to sand something like this. So I've got lots of bits of plastic around, and I actually make my own sanding. Nice sanding surfaces. You can make them out of bits of plastic, make all different sizes. Oops, drop that one. We'll go with this one here. But like this one has got a really fine paper on it. Oh, about a 600 grit. This one here has got about 100 grit on it. So I'll start off with 100 grit. And just work the rest of that out. And within a few minutes, your details just start to disappear with that sandpaper. Big pieces like this, I will take, like we got these stirrups here, I will just take these nippers and we'll just nip those off, and I'll show you how we build new ones. So now we got a nice flat surface. We can take our little sanding tools and sand off the nub there. And then these little nubs here, I can take either my flat blade or my curved blade and just start scraping that stuff off. Like I said, just take your time. It doesn't take long. And again, take that sanding paper, those little sanding jigs you make out of plastic. And like I said, they're real simple. You got some extra plastic laying around. These are handy. You can make all different sizes for this kind of thing. And during this process, we're not really looking to conform too much to everything. We're just looking to take off the details right away. We can do the finer stuff later. But in a few minutes, you've got details removed. Like I said, well, I'll go in later and take a little more sandpaper and start removing those details. For bigger details like on this car, and I can share a car that I am going to plan on building here. Let me grab this up here. This car here, unfortunately, there's very few photos that exist of it. The 53-foot flat cars, Milwaukee Road, kind of hand built or custom built themselves. They put bulkheads on the end, and they were wood and steel flat cars. And this one, I'm going to make the same thing. I will take off all the molded on details, and I will just start following and copying this example. Unfortunately, like I said, the prototype is very, very hard to find, and this is one of the best I could find on the internet. So if I got bigger details to remove, like this one, we've got some nice molded on detail here. Once again, I can take those snips and I can remove big detail. And easily comes right off. And then once again, I can take my flat blades and just start coming in here and removing everything that doesn't belong. And then when you're done, you come back in with your handmade little sanding jigs and you sand those little areas away. Like I said, you can come back and refine everything later on here while you're going along and building. So once you got all of your molded on detail gone, there's many different parts you can use to super detail these. And I use kind of a mixture. I can use some precision scale parts. These are angle cocks and glad hands we'll use those on the end. But let's say you're looking for stirrups. You know, you can go buy some precision scale stirrups, or you can also make your own stirrups for this kind of thing using K&S flat brass. This is a very cheap brass. You can usually pick up a package of these for $1 or $2. And then I use a little blue handled tool here, little flat pliers, and I can bend this to the shape of a stirrup. And voila, you got yourself a stirrup very quickly. And you can cut it out using your little snips here. So if you're not really interested in buying all the detail parts, you can make your own. Bend this out front. Bend that around. And in the end, well, you've snipped it off. Let's see, let's find my end I've been working on here. So then, as you can see, you can glue your little detail part right on there that you just made. And what I'll do is I'll usually take this and I'll drill holes in each end, and then I will pin it using brass wire if I'm going to use this type of a fine detail. Very simple, doesn't take very long. Like I said, you just use some patience when you're doing this kind of thing. Any questions so far? Anything I can cover?
James, how do you put the sandpaper on your stick?
I actually go to the automotive stores, and they sell a sticky back sandpaper for a couple of bucks, and you get a package of 10 of them, and you can make your own little sanding jig here and then cut it out to shape and then stick it right to this. And the nice part is this one's pretty much worn out anyway. It just pulls right off.
Thanks,
Handy.
James.
Yep. So this car here, like I said, I'm rebuilding, but in the end, what we're looking for is something like this. I put wood decks on all my cars. This is HO scale lumber. These are 2x10s that I use for O scale cars. And you're looking for all those details, like these grab irons here, right here. Those are made of brass wire. It's just 20 thousandths brass wire. I use a number 76 drill bit to drill the hole, and then the brass wire fits right in. And you can pick up brass wire for $1 or $2. This car, I think I've got a total of maybe $10 into it, minus the trucks and couplers. So if you're looking for a surefire way to bring a car to life, and all the details are literally brass wire. The new cut lever is brass wire, just bent to shape. Like I said, I use precision scale. Actually, these are my own bent. Sorry about that. But I bent these using brass flat, and then I pinned them. You can kind of see the pinning job I did there. I drilled, pinned it into the car so they won't easily break off. But this car, like I said, I just did it a couple of evenings at work. I took off all the molded on detail, and then I just started detailing the car. And I haven't finished up the wood yet because I ran out of my 2x10s. But you can see I sanded off some of the detail here, and then I started adding the wood to it. And then I'll come in and weather it and gray it when I'm done. And we'll go back to this car here. These, you can pick these up at a show for about $1 a piece. They're old AHM 40-foot flat cars. You can see the detail here. It's very crude, but for $1, it's hard to beat, because in the end, what I am building is this guy. This is the Milwaukee Roads, their log flats made out of 40-foot steel cars. And this car was built out of this. And I've got about $5 in plastic into this, and I've just taken my time. I took off all of the detail because they were flat-sided steel. I added down here towards the belly of the car so I could get the angle right, but you don't have to do that. I mean, and then once I'm done doing all the major work in detail, I'll start. And what I'll do, let's say I'm going to put grab irons on this car. I will take little felt tip marker and I will just put the dots where I'll drill the holes on the car so that I can always line it up straight. I can use a little ruler, make sure everything is square and straight. And then I drill into the car and then make my grab irons. Can I show anybody anything they need to see?
James, how do you make your coupler pockets?
The coupler pockets. So when I take the Katie coupler, all it is on the outside of the coupler itself, the coupler box that the Katie's come with, is I just add some plastic to give it more of a realistic look. And I'll round it off. And usually these are just, I believe these are 40 thousandths pieces of plastic. I'll try and bring this in just a little bit here, you can kind of see that plastic there. And that's on the outside of the box itself, just to kind of give it a more realistic look.
How do you attach the coupler?
Coupler, once again, is attached using the original Katie box. And I just used a couple of screws in this case. And what I did is, since these cars need to be raised up a little bit, the couplers need to drop down so that they actually have the perfect height. I just drill a hole into the plastic that I added, and then I tap it using 256 screws. And they don't need to poke, and these don't poke through the car. It doesn't need a lot of pressure because we're dealing with model railroad here. So and if you needed some extra strength, let's say, you could put a little dab of glue on there, just to kind of help it.
Are those P48 wheel sets on there?
Yes, sir, they are. I am a P48er. So I spend a little more on the trucks. Now, you don't have to. Like, these cars came with a 3-rail truck that you can convert to 2-rail 5-foot or 2-rail Proto 48. And the nice part is, who is it that sells the Northwest Short Line sells all the wheel sets for you. And for $15-20, you can have all the wheels for these cars from a Weaver or a 3-rail Atlas, or in this case, an AHM.
Thanks, Jamie.
Quick question, how do you weigh there's not that much of a car, so what do you use for weights?
Sure, this one right here, you're probably guessing?
Yes.
So when I built the bunks on these, they were all built out of plastic. I hand built them. All of these are filled with lead shot. Every one of these bunks. Now, I made sure that the lead shot does not stick through, so you can look down inside the bunk and you won't see anything. But all of these are filled with lead shot. And then since the frames, you're not really picking up the frames, this is filled with lead shot. And this car comes in with the trucks at just about a pound. So it's relatively heavy. And then, of course, when I put the logs in here, the car will be plenty heavy to roll down the track. This car here comes with its own weight. Weaver, when they built their cars, it comes with a nice big weight in the middle. And I just left that in there. But otherwise, if you don't like the look of the weight, you can just paint it, or you can remove it and then put in lead shot and cover it up. But this is probably weighing in about a pound as well. But this car,
is the trucks also metal, or are they plastic?
they are brass. These trucks are brass. Protocraft built the trucks. They're really, really nice. And the roller bearing, they actually have a nice roller bearing to them look. The caps spin and everything. Not too bad for an evening's worth of work. Like I said, I take everything to work with me. So I'll usually put together a little briefcase and then all my sanding supplies. And when I'm sitting up and loading trains, I work on trains. So it's kind of a nice dual purpose there.
Jamie, what's the hardest part? What would be the most difficult part to do that? Difficult piece of work to do that for a beginner?
Probably the most difficult would be making sure everything is straight. That's why I recommend if you're, because you can notice very quickly if this grab iron right here is tilting downward or upward. And that's why I'll take these little felt tip markers and I will just add little dots using a ruler or something to keep myself straight. Because I've seen a few cars very well done, but all of the grab irons are tilted one way or the other because they weren't completely straight. And that could be probably the most difficult thing. And that's why I recommend use a little felt tip marker to kind of mark your area, use a ruler, keep it straight, and then you're good to go. Otherwise, just a few tools, some X-Acto knives. You could use your own files. If you do have files, I keep a couple of extra files on hand. You don't have to build your own, even though the home built ones, you can make them to fit almost every surface type. So if you've got like this one's got a ridge here, and the nice part is these are so tiny is I can just follow that ridge and shave off all of that detail without even touching the ridge here. And like I said, just take your time. Doesn't have to go fast. But for anyone that's on a budget, I do this, and I love building cars. So if I can find a really good deal out there, this is a surefire way of getting a bunch of cars up on your layout and well detailed for very little. And you can make everything out of brass. You can make it out of wire. You can basically fool the eye into thinking that you went out and commercially bought everything when you probably got all of $10 into the car.
James, am I right? If you go to a train show, these are probably in a box under the table because they're just, nobody wants them.
Yeah, typically, one of the cars I found a couple of years ago at the Chicago O-Scale meet was a high cube Great Northern box car, and the guy wanted $5 for it. Well, I completely stripped it down, rebuilt it, and I think I still have that $5 into it. But let me go grab it here quick. I got it on the layout. But you can find some pretty amazing finds at shows. And like this car was already weathered and ready to go. Problem is they didn't do a very good job putting it together, so the car warped. So I completely stripped the car down to its basic details and started putting it back together. And you can see here some new angle, plastic angle, kind of fill in the spots that had warped. And I straightened them out. And like I said, for $5, it's hard to beat. And the trucks that came with it, we just dropped our own Proto 48 wheel sets into. Otherwise, they were ready to go. And I still have some work to do on this car yet. But I built my own cushion drawbars on it. And those are just incorporating the original Katy coupler pocket. And I built plastic all around the Katy coupler and then just tapped for a couple of screws to hold it in place. This screw is actually sunk on the very end hole of the Katy coupler box. And then I have another one located here with a continuation of the cushion drawbar, just to give it some rigidity. But that's using a typical Katy coupler and one of their more realistic knuckle couplers.
Not bad for $5, James.
Yeah, for $5, like I said, it's hard to beat. You know, I tried doing some research. I don't believe this car is prototypical at all. In fact, I don't think the GN had any high cubes, but you know what? It's too cool not to have.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, I've got about 10, 15 hours into it and just rebuilding it. And like I said, for $5, I don't think you can beat it. But I love looking for little things like this and bringing them back to life, because someone thought this was a great looking car, and I think it's a great looking car, and I just wanted to bring her back to life and put it on a layout to show.
Very nice.
Another question: how do you remove details on a like a steam boiler? I got a locomotive that has a cast-on air pump, and I want to take it off. How would you do that?
Okay, is it brass or plastic?
Plastic.
Okay, there's a couple of different ways you can do that. I highly recommend anyone that has some molded on detail as well, look into these little blades here. And these are miniature X-Acto saw blades, and you can get them in extremely fine or coarse teeth. If I can get any of them out of here. But these are great for taking off if you've got some delicate work. These will slice through without ever damaging things around it. And I'll demonstrate here for you. So for instance, let's say this little thing here I got to take off. And I can bring this blade up and just start working away, and it will just eat into that plastic. Like I said, you can just take your time. And then what I would do is I would build a couple of small little sandpaper holders out of plastic, and then just round it after you've got the major detail off, and then just start sanding it to match the contour of the body. Let's see if I can get this to... But these make it so easy. I can just barely touch this and it just eats away at the detail. And you don't have to put a lot of pressure into it at all. As you can see, let's see here if I can get her to zoom in here a little bit. It just eats away. Like I said, you can cut details off. Let's say I don't want this here. Instead of using nips, we'll say I want to just cut it off. So we'll cut it off using this thing. There's one. There's two. And just like that, it took it off without anything. And like I said, these little things are handy. You can make them do just about anything. You can come in here and just do a little sanding. You can use these on rounded surfaces. Just follow the contour of the surface. Use them on flat surfaces. And just like that, it's gone. And then what you can do, let's say you're getting close to your surface. Like I said, these rounded blades are great for scraping. You can come in here and just slowly scrape detail away. These will also takeoff lettering. So if you're wondering, like you don't want to, let's say you want to get rid of the 3 and make it like a 7, you could come in here and just start slowly scraping away the 3, and it will actually take it right off without completely marring up your surface. You just have to barely touch it, and it'll, as you can see there, the 3 starts to disappear. But definitely recommend these little tools right here. And Micromark, I believe someone put in the chat, Micromark is a great place to pick up all these little tools. And just like that, that 3 is gone. I barely scratched the surface. I could put a 7 in here and it'd be done. Any other questions I can answer?
James, I want to thank you again for doing this. You answered the modeler's question just perfectly.
Perfect. Good.
And like you say, for a couple of bucks and a little bit of time,
Yep.
you can sure have some nice railroad cars.
You sure do. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, now I'd like to turn to Martin Breckbiel, MMR. Martin, welcome.
Evening, Jim.
How's it going?
Oh, just loads and loads of fun.
Gotcha.
I'm being completely facetious. I'll explain that later if you really, really want to know. So let me find the screen here. Okay, so yeah, not scratch building this time. It's sort of kit building. I kind of alluded to this last week. This is going to be the current brand new All-Nation Caboose, or a version thereof, because I don't actually have an entire kit at my disposal. I built what I could build from what I was sent, which means it's more a seat of the pants assembly than anything else. But before we get into that, last week I made mention about an end mill milling something off. I don't remember what it was reference to, but I was having trouble explaining it. Just this basic Dremel bit. I forgot what it is. It's like, I think it's the number 115 or something like that. Or 151. I'm not sure which one it is, but there's the barcode for anybody who likes to read barcodes. It's basically a straight mill, and I chuck these into whatever, but if it's something that I actually have to exercise a little bit of care, it goes into my little variable speed drill press, and I lock everything down and just mill out whatever has to be milled out, be it metal or plastic, usually white metal, most often in my case, but plastic on occasion. Wood, whenever I really want to make the dust and chips fly. But you can get these from anywhere that sells Dremel parts. They are sharp as the blazes, and you don't want to be anywhere near your fingers with them when they're running. So, on to the kit. Okay, so All-Nation went belly up about 14, 15 years ago now. And in the last year, John Wubble bought the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, and a moving van load of stuff, and he's still sorting stuff out from what I understand. But he is in the process of recreating the kits. You're not going to see the old All-Nation kits come back. You're going to see the modern, updated versions of them. This is what he sent me in the one box. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I've got a wooden roof. I got something that looks like a floor. This is really, really thin sheet here. I wasn't sure what that was. A bag of stuff that looks, well, we've got bolsters and other underbody things. Okay. And then I got another box, more stuff. He sent me several boxes, and I got these straight pieces, and I thought, I don't even know what those belong to. I thought, well, that'll be an adventure. Ends, pretty obvious. Those are the ends. And this is the cupola. I thought, well, okay. Bag full of parts for the cupola. Windows. Windows go in the sides. Where are the sides? In the next box, sides. Now, this stuff's all 3D printed. So sides are kind of cool. You know, you could spend a lot of time building these things out of wood or styrene or whatever you want, but banging it out on a 3D printer is pretty slick and fast, relatively speaking. So even if I only had to buy from him the sides and the ends, that would be a major savings in time and effort, particularly if I can get the windows to go with it. And I suspect, of course, if you know what size windows they are and what style, you can 3D print the windows too. So all those parts become very readily available for kits and cars that were previously not available. So I have the side door version of this. He has a version without the side door in it as well. Well, then I got another box with more parts in it. John liked to send me stuff, apparently. Now I have a roof, another piece of some sort of flooring. I'm not sure. I think that's an interior floor, which I probably didn't actually use. Some more underbody parts and some white metal end platforms. Well, those are kind of vintage. Those seem like they came from a prior existence of All-Nation. So there's a little bit of a marriage going on here. But now I have a wood roof, a printed roof, which is actually pretty interesting. Flip it over, and you can see it's got the all the markings for installing the cupola, and it's rounded. It has a little dimple here for a smoke jack, and might as well just see if we can put this together. Now, these things actually, these bolsters actually can be drilled and screwed in from the inside. I didn't even bother. A little bit of glue, a little bit of CA. I can't get them back off without hitting it with a chisel and a hammer, so I don't worry about, you know, if you need to worry about this coming off, you're doing something you're really manhandling your equipment on your railroad unnecessarily. So what those straight pieces are, they fit in the notch at each end. Everything just drops together pretty slickly, pretty smoothly. Little CA, a little bit of goo. Bang, you've got a box with a roof on it, 2 end blocks, a floor base, and here's one of the bolster blocks. And you just mount this white metal part onto this piece, and you can pre-drill out all the holes for your railings and brake shaft. Go to the sides. Well, the windows are actually 2 pieces. There's an interior and there's the trim port piece. These were all a little tight on the fitting. It was just like they were swollen slightly, but some light sanding, a real sharp X-Acto or a real sharp scalpel opens the hole up just a little bit. They drop right in, a little CA, they don't come back out. So this is PLA printed as well. So it's once it's together, it's not going to go very far. So mount the sides. Turned out in this particular case, this side seemed a little bit short. That may have been on me or not, I don't know. But a little bit of styrene, and after it's painted, you know, if I hadn't shown it to you, I'm pretty sure you probably wouldn't notice it. One thing I had to talk to John about is he's got to leave a notch here. It's problematic someday down the line. Someone will complain about that. You know, milling all that out would be a bit of a burden for the average modeler. It's a lot of surface area. On the ends, okay, so the roof had the nice opening space. So you could actually put something in the cupola if you really so chose to do. The ends, this piece gets overlaid, door, which just drops into place, which wasn't quite right. Now, this is the pre-production of the kit. So he's throwing me parts that hot off the printer just to try stuff. I had to shim this a little bit with a little bit of styrene. It's okay, fine. Start adding details, railings, grab irons, wires, steps, brake wheels, precision scale. Nice thing about this is you can, with these all pre-drilled, is you can just bend the wire into place and solder it right in place. And I did solder this one together in place, even with, this is, I don't know how flammable polylactic acid is, probably pretty flammable, but I had no problem soldering this together, and I use a small torch. So this goes together pretty smoothly. And you worry about this little bit of this rough underneath here, but after you get your trim boards in, you really don't see it. Cupola. Well, he actually includes, there's a cupola jig for a sunlunar cupola. So you drop all 4 pieces in, drop your glue in, hold it together, bang, pull it out of the jig. Hopefully you don't glue it to the jig. And you have a cupola ready to install. And it's already pre-aligned. This is a roof that it's very flexible, that you glue in place. These are the wood panels that fit in between the windows. So fast forward ahead a little bit. You can see it drops right into that hole on the roof. Came with some more black roofing material, very flexible. All the wire work is just stuff that I added. The ladders, those are just from stock. Actually, they're old stock All-Nation ladders from a very long time ago that I just happen to have. The one thing I did not have that John did not send me were steps. So I'm using some old Traincraft steps that I had, old white metal ones, which just barely fit in the gap, which is fine. As long as they don't fall out, I'm happy with that. They stay there. Smoke jack came from, I think that's Grant Line, actually. Brass one, an old brass one. Just a bunch of brass wire, some loops that were sunk into the roof and threaded with some phosphor bronze wire. And some steps that were made up real quick for some scrap brass laying around in my shop. Oh, and it came with a toolbox too. I was in one of those bags. So the ends, I forgot to put doorknobs on the doors. Someday I'll have to come back and do that. Ladders are just brass wire and old brass, all soldered up and put into place, pinned in place. Some airline air hoses, that's just precision scale parts. Underbody. Okay, John didn't give me anything. So everything that's there, I added. These are just parts that came out of my toolbox of brake parts. So this is just brass 15 by 42 thousandths brass for the hangers. Brake levers, I think, came from Berkshire Valley or Scale City. I'm not sure which, but the rest is just wire and plastic parts. And you can get a whole brake set from Wiseman Model Services that'll actually give you the instructions on where all the plumbing goes together, and so you don't have to worry about figuring it out on your own. It's pretty straightforward, in fact. It's really actually a really good resource on an AB brake system. You get all the parts and the instructions and diagrams all in one bag. Okay, and you take it out in the garage on a day that hasn't been raining and paint it caboose red, scale coat, and try not to get it everywhere and on everything while you're doing that. Managed to keep the roof almost not painted. I ended up hand painting the roof. That's light gray. Say that fast 5 times. And a pair of Walthers Sierra car trucks underneath it, because my pair of All-Nation trucks were not quite right for this version of this car. And it comes together pretty nicely. It's a pretty decent looking caboose. Without instructions, I think I got to something that's acceptable at the end of the day. And one thing is probably not, or it is obvious depending on who you are, it's heavy. It's several pounds. All that PLA, that floor, that roof. A lot of that roof, I think, could be removed. I have to talk to John about that he could minimize a lot of that printing on the roof. He's put a lot of material and time on his printer into the roof, and I think you could do without that and the weight that comes with it, because it's not top heavy, but it's not light. This car will have no problem rolling down any hill on your layout. And there's the roof. It's just, yeah, that's all hand painted lark light gray. And the rest is just, actually that roof walk was 3D printed as well. The center one, the end walks are mine. So it's a lot of 3D printing. So he's got some very interesting kits available. He has a basic stripped down version of this car as a kit on eBay. I think it's like $29.99. I mean, that's, you know, it doesn't come with any details. You're on your own details, but for $29.99, that's a pretty good bargain in O-scale for anything today. So I don't know what's going to happen next week. I have no idea what I'm going to have built in time to talk about it. It may be a mixture of odds and ends for all I know. And if anybody's got any questions, start screaming them out.
His casting or the 3D prints are actually really nice. I got to see some up hand and they are smooth and well done.
Yeah, John's doing a very nice job on this. The two other cars I know he has, well, there's the traction flat car, and he has a basic kit of that out. And he has a traction gondola car now. I just saw that as a basic car, and of course the waffle side car. So, and the last conversation I had with him a couple of weeks ago, he's looking at the All-Nation tank cars, see if he can revive their tank cars, which would be very cool because just think about it. If he can just print you domes, tank car domes. You want a 3-dome car, you want a 2-dome car, you want a 6-dome car, various different styles, different cars. Very quickly, a lot of things become accessible and available that otherwise just don't exist.
Yeah, it's really nice. Thanks.
Yep.
I really wish him the best. I'm so happy he brought the company back to life again.
Yeah, I'm trying to help him as best I can, promote some of it a little bit, but you know, it's all buildable. I mean, even without instructions, you can do, you know, there's only so many ways you can put these parts together. And I'm trying to figure out how many ways can you do it wrong? Very, very few. And you do get it, you know, wrong. There's a pretty short list on wrong ways to build this. It's pretty obvious. So
I love the jig for the Coupler. I think that's a great idea.
that's a brilliant idea because they're a pain in the rump to put together. You're holding 4 little squiggly pieces together with glue all over your fingers. And usually what happens is you glue the cupola to your hand.
That's right.
And it falls apart. And you have 4 pieces glued to your hand at the same time, whereupon colorful language and adult beverages become a necessity to continue.
Martin, thanks so very much. I really do appreciate it tonight. That was great.
Thank you. Okay.
Now I'd like to turn to our featured modeler, Roger Rasmussen. Roger owns the company Coastmans Scenic Products. And that was a new company for me. I was not familiar with it. I found the company thanks to a member of the show who sent me an email and suggested that I contact Roger. And I did, and I was really impressed after talking with him and seeing some of the trees that he builds. And Roger, thank you so much for being here tonight. And also thank you so much for offering the door prize for this evening.
Well, thanks, Jim, so much for inviting me to the meeting. I really appreciate it. And I suppose this is where I go forward here.
This is where you go forward, sir.
Alrighty. So I'm Roger with Coastmans Scenic Products. I make scenery products, and I live on the Oregon coast, so I'm on the west side of the United States. And I make both model fir trees and model fir tree kits. And so tonight I'll be making a 9-inch fir tree for you from this kit. And what I have for you first is just a little introduction to my company. So I'll play a video and
Roger, let me ask you a question. Now, the
Yes, sir.
9-inch, the old growth 9-inch kit, that's what you're offering as a door prize, right?
that is correct. Yes, I'll be giving one of these away tonight as a door prize. Mhm.
So you get a double tonight. You get a door prize, but you also get to see Roger build it.
Exactly. So you could potentially produce a tree such as this one that I'm holding in my right hand from the tree kit. Mhm.
Gotcha.
So, all right. So, all right. I'm just going to go ahead with the video here. That's a little bit of an introduction. And so to do that, I need to share the screen here. Now. Are you right? We had that. I'm just trying to figure out how to share the video, and we did this earlier. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, okay, there we go. And okay, here we are. I'm going to go ahead and play this.
Okay.
Is that? Yeah.
We are having no sound.
Okay. Pause it then. That's not how this.
When you share, did you
Okay,
click the
so
box?
unstop sharing. Go ahead and stop sharing. Click up at go up the top, move your mouse up to the very top in the center, and you'll see something that says stop sharing. Click on that.
Okay.
Okay, now click share again.
Trying to figure out where that is.
It's down at the bottom. Go to the Zoom window now. Go back to the Zoom window. Get Zoom up where you see all of us waving at you.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the very bottom of that screen, if you're on the screen, you'll see a green thing that says share screen.
Correct. Okay.
Click on that.
Yes. Now,
Now at the bottom of that, there's a thing that says optimize for video. Click optimize for video.
gotcha.
Now share your
Roger,
screen and play the
wait.
video.
Actually, if you go to, do you have an advanced tab on top?
You do the advanced if
window?
you want to. Go up at the top of the screen. Does it say advanced? When you do
Yes.
share, okay, click on advanced.
I did.
And then
And
where
then
it says,
video.
do you get video there? Does it say video?
Yes.
Click on video.
Okay.
Now just open the file you want to share there. You get a little file system, just open the file you want to share there.
Okay, I did so.
Okay, just play it now.
Coastmans Scenic Products, model fir tree manufacturer,
Is that working?
Port Orford, Oregon. It's a very windy day
Yes.
here, and
Great.
we're at my home. This is where I put together most of the fir trees and where I have my layout, HO scale. So I'm going to introduce you to my garage. Come on in. So there's several parts here. This side over here is where I make the trees, and in through this door here is my more favorite area where we make models. So come on in. This is my model making studio. So anything that we fabricate for making models, such as this piece here was used in a lighthouse model. This is a glass and solder combination here for the top of a lighthouse. Lots of parts lying around, tools, everything that one would have for model making, 3D printouts. Over in this corner here, we've got a couple of machines, 3D printers. We've got the filament-based 3D printer and then also a resin-based one. All of my supplies here for making models. Up on this shelf, you can see some of the pieces of the art that I make. I don't know how well that'll show up on the camera, but it sort of gives you an idea of some of the things that I do with the trees besides model trains. And in this way, then we have a model train room, which is also storage for model fir trees. And here's a kind of example of how the fir trees can be used. So on my layout, I'm trying to depict the Nehalem River area of northwestern Oregon in this model. So this part of the layout is dedicated towards that. This is about a 17-foot by 8-foot or so layout in HO scale. And so I've used the trees that I make and some other scenery materials that I make to produce this. And the trees that you see here can be made from the kits that I sell. So there's that area, and then here at the mouth of the Nehalem River, we have a Nehalem estuary area, which is pretty typical of an estuary-like area on the Oregon coast. I've got the railroad running through it, as is the case up near Tillamook, Oregon, where it crosses the Nehalem River. And don't have the epoxy-based water poured yet, but getting closer every day. Most recent addition here were these blackberry bushes, and I used the leftovers from making model fir trees with my coconut coir sawdust material to make these blackberry bushes. So it's another thing that can be done with the leftovers from fir tree kits. Moving along here, we have an area called the Miami River, which is near Garibaldi, Oregon, and I'm using this scene to kind of represent that. And going further south along the Oregon coast, you would come into Tillamook. I've got some stand-in buildings for that, representing what one might see there in the 1970s, 1980s. I've got my version of the locomotive that's used along the Oregon coast up there, as well as a grain cooperative area that's there in southern Tillamook, right along the railroad lines that used to be served by the railroad. It's not now, but okay, so we've got the layout, and here's a piece of art that I've been working on. Always trying different things that can be done with the model trees. So have a stump on and a log on a piece of myrtle wood there. So, alrighty, so we're here at the shop where the tree trunks are manufactured. All the tree trunks are made out of Orford cedar. Alrighty, so in this area I make both the green branches for the model fir tree kits, as well as the cedar trunks, which are made from Port Orford cedar. So this is, in essence, part of the materials that I use to make the green branches. We've got a pressure sprayer that attaches to an air compressor that will spray white glue. That's part of the system there. Lots of bottles of white glue. We've got plenty of sawdust lying around. This is the sawdust material here that I use. So I make this green sawdust from Port Orford cedar, which is found in this area, and it makes a real nice fluffy kind of a sawdust, which I think works great for making green branches. Could be used for other kinds of architectural scenery too. Over here, this is where the wood dusty area. Lots of sawdust in this area. Sawdust is plentiful, and we start out with the tapering machine, So using Orford cedar dowels, they're cut to length and inserted into the dowel holders on the machine. And this machine will hold 23 of them. And so the machine essentially has a large sanding belt, it's 24 inches wide. And then it has a pressure plate that pushes on the dowels. And then the dowels themselves rotate in this device here. So the dowels are essentially spinning at the same time they are being sanded on the belt. And then the lid here, you call it, pressure plate comes down and pushes on the dowels. And then to provide even more pressure, we've got the weight that comes down here. And that pushes on the pressure plate. Okay? And there's various ways of running this machine to get what you want, but eventually you pull the weight up. And then you pull the lid up. And then you have your finished tapered dowels, which look something like this one. This is a broken one, but okay. Now that's before they get the bark detail. So this machine here is the next step in the process. I like to call this machine Bob Barker. It's essentially just 3 drills, and each of the drills is fitted with the wire brushes on them. Can you see that wire brush in there? And then in addition to that, we have a handle, and that handle actuates a rod that goes up and down towards the wire brushes. And so what happens there is the tree trunk goes in the top and goes through the wire brushes and rides on that post, and then it comes back up and you pull the tree trunk out and you voila, got your bark detail on there. And I don't have any to show you at this time, but here's what bark detail looks like on a log. And so that's essentially having been run through Bob Barker. Then they just need the hole in them in the base for putting a planting pin or mounting pin. And that's just a matter of drilling the bottom of the trunk with this little jig. At that point, they're ready for dye, which I take them back home again and dye them appropriate color with water-based dyes. This area is also used to make large trees. I've got various tools, a chop saw. This machine here is a lathe with a router attached to it. And so the router rides on top of the lathe and can make a tapered tree trunk, a much larger one than what can be made on the tapering machine. And there's other ways of making them too, like with grinding type tools. One of which used quite often is the saber tooth grinding disc. I don't seem to have it here, but angle grinders are another very useful tool for making trunks. So we've got a bandsaw. That's the basic equipment for making model fir tree trunks and green branches. Thank you. All right, and off to where the trees are made. Let's come back this way. And I have a small room here where pretty much all of the trees are made, put together, and all of the shipping is also done in this room. So I pretty much just clear everything out of the way and begin putting packages together. So on this wall here I have all of the tree trunks and parts used to make the tree. So here's an entire box full of 9-inch trunks, for instance. Here's an entire box full of 7-inch trunks. So these will be used to put together packages of model fir tree kits, also extra trunks, which are purchasable separately. I've got some trees lying around that I've been working on. They're in progress. Always a crowded operation in here. It's not a very large space. This is a hot plate, obviously, and then I have on top of the hot plate, I use actual tree pitch. So this is pitch that I obtained from trees here in the area, typically shore pines. And I've added dyes and beeswax and various other ingredients to this to make it into an adhesive I can use to attach dead branches to the models. So when you see like the premium trees, the photos of those on my website, they have these little dead branches, and also they're also purchase available separately. Those are, I'm adding those using the tree pitch because it's a very rapid way of placing those branches on the trunk. And I don't think I'll be demonstrating that today, but maybe there's a video about that on my website, I believe. Okay. When I go to make trees, I grab a stool, and this is my typical setup here. I've got a block of styrofoam and a tree trunk, which I've placed the toothpick in the bottom. The trunks all come with the holes pre-drilled in the bottom. So all you have to do is put the toothpick in there. I usually glue them in and stab that into the block of foam. Pour yourself some white glue in a dish. So here's some white glue lying around. I've got my green branches material here. So this is one of the products that I make, the green branches material, and it's made from coconut coir fibers, white glue, and sawdust. And I've dyed the sawdust green. It's also been screen filtered to the what I feel is the best size particle for this application. You could also add a material like Woodland Scenic's conifer green to this after you're finished making the tree, if this doesn't have the right appearance for you. I find this is okay. This is the trees that you saw earlier on my layout, and so I'm okay with it, but to each his own on that. So let me just show you here how I put the trees together. In essence, it's a white glue application to the trunk, and then the material over the top of the tree. I scrunch the material to give it some shape and slide it down the trunk. I repeat the process until I'm at the top of the tree. Okay, and so that's what I'm going to do for you live on Zoom today, is make trees. And just talk a little bit about what I'm doing and what I'm thinking as I'm putting the trees together, so that you might be able to gather from that and move forward with your own, or however you do trees. And that's pretty much it for this area. All right, see you soon.
I just have to exit now. Okay, I think I'm back. Alrighty, are there any questions from, any questions from the video that anyone has? Am I being heard okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, a question on the finished trees. Do you give them a coat of clear spray afterwards to help that nice foliage from falling off, or do you need a dull coat over it?
Right. So I failed to mention that when I finish the tree, let me just go through those steps just a little bit. So here's one that I've just put together, any additional foliage. And it's quite spindly, and there's a lot of loose ends here, and there's not a very full tree, in my opinion. I don't know, on my white shirt, it just doesn't really, it's hard to see it in the video. That Try some cardboard. Not the cardboard is a better background. Get that?
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So that as opposed to, no, let's go down. That as opposed to, here's one that's a little more finished. So I've added additional spray white glue to this, and then additional sawdust turf that I make. And then also on top of that, I have added some what I call highlights colors. Those are also included in the kit. There's little packets there. And you can sprinkle those on, and that sort of gives it a little bit more depth. So it seems to the tree. A couple different colors there. And then at home, the trees that go out in boxes, I add another light spraying or airbrushing of a rusty color. I call it bug spray because it's sort of like the bug infested trees, or it's a little bit of a dead needle appearance to the tree. So all of that happens to the trees that leave here that I make. At home, it would be difficult. Most people, they're not going to have the white glue spray. So you would use, you would complete the tree from the kit, and then you would use like hairspray Aquanet, Super Hold Unscented would be one way to go. And then probably the Woodland Scenics material would be the thing that most people would want to go to at that point. So you're essentially building an armature and then adding additional scenic turf to that. And I don't sell my own version of that yet. I'd like to in the future, but I haven't got that far. So you would add the Woodland Scenics and then the highlights, or you could even just go with just the highlights themselves. So you can see they're pretty close. I get a little additional fullness here on this tree with the addition of some sawdust. As far as an overspray after that goes, though, like a clear coat, or I don't find that they really seem to need it. The sawdust is quite absorbing of the glue, and so they don't seem to part very easily. I used to use the Woodland Scenics conifer green for all the trees, and it was difficult. It was more difficult to retain that on the tree. But these are a little bit tougher, actually. So that's one advantage that I've enjoyed having changed over to the sawdust. And I know the sawdust has not been the most popular scenic material in the model railroad circles, but I've definitely enjoyed the fact that I have a lot of access to it, and also I've been able to color it, I think, a fairly close color to the Woodland Scenics product, actually. So anyhow, I think that helps answer that question.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. They're great looking trees, especially with the little extra filler in there. It really makes them pop.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So any other questions at this time?
When you're adding the extra filler, are you sprinkling that from the top down or holding the tree upside down and then adding it
That's a great
from the
question.
bottom up?
Great question. So and yes, you are correct. Any extra that you add, I would be careful not to approach the tree at too sharp of an angle from the side, because you will essentially then fill all the nice little gaps that are there with green material, which you would not want to do that. So rain down on top of the tree. But I do, having said that, I do approach it from slight angles, but just not sideways, because that would yield probably a green trunk at that point. So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anything else? Any other questions?
Well, in the video, you showed what looked to be like a 2 foot tall armature for a tree. Is that your largest type of tree?
I have made trees over 50 inches, actually, not very often. At times, and for different, not always for model trains, but for different applications, I've made pretty large trees. There's a Star Wars crowd out there that enjoys making models of the Endor scenes in the second movie that they had way back in the 80s. And so I've been requested at times to make trees for that. And so on my website, there's an area called Big Trees and the Sequoias. And so I've done trees more often in the 24 to 36 inch range, but then sometimes larger than that. Did a commercial a while back for a group in Los Angeles, in Hollywood, that was doing an Xbox commercial for the video game. And they had a digital rabbit running through a forest. And the forest was about, I think it was about 30 feet wide and about 15 feet deep, fairly large scale. So they requested several 36-inch tall trees without the tops on them. So the focus was more on the bottom to the middle part of the tree. So that was a pretty large project last summer that I did. And at a fast pace too for those guys. But more often, you know, I'm doing these trees in the sort of anywhere from 5 to 13 inches. Seems to be that's the bread and butter here.
Roger, if I'm trying to use trees on a layout, how many trees do I need?
Well, you know, there's a lot of variables, I suppose. It's a great question. You've got the type of forest that you're trying to replicate in the area that you're working on. So, you know, East Coast versus West Coast, there's going to be some differences there. I've never been back to the East Coast, so I'm not exactly sure what all is involved in modeling a forest. Then you have to also consider the era that you're working in, the time frame. So obviously long ago, early logging railroads dealt with large logs. So that would then dictate that you would need larger trees. On my packages here, one thing that I've done is I've just put a little sort of a guide in the corner here. It's got a 9-inch tall tree. And then in O scale, that's 36 feet. In HO scale, that's a 65-foot tree. And in N scale, it's 115 feet. So having your calculator on hand and a little bit of background knowledge about how tall the trees were in the area and era that you are attempting to replicate, that's how I kind of go about it. Here on the West Coast, fir trees, typically anywhere from 80 up to 150 feet. Taller for older growth trees, approaching 300 feet, sometimes more. And then another consideration on that aspect is on the layout, it's not possible to do everything to exact scale. You've got to condense. So then you're probably going to condense on tree height to some degree, because otherwise in an HO scale layout, you might have a lot of 20-inch trees running around, which takes up a heck of a lot of space. So that has to be taken into consideration, just exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish, I think. So again, there's quite a few variables on that aspect. Go ahead. I hope that answers that question.
Well, let me approach it a little differently. Let's say that I have your trees as foreground trees. So now I have 5 of your trees as foreground trees. The rest of them would be background and certainly wouldn't have to be of the same quality in order to create my forest. Is that right?
That's sort of how I think. And again, just sort of it's to whatever the preference is, but I agree. The background trees definitely do not need to have obviously dead branch detail or something like that. That's just not probably important. So you could go with like a bottle brush tree in the background. You could make your own trees using these trunks with maybe a different material like a furnace filter. So many different ways you could approach it. Got some other trees on my website that I make fairly quickly. They are made a little bit different method, and I make a lot of them at once. I've got a broken one back. Here's a little 6-inch tree, and it's very, very full. But what you can do is attack this with some scissors or something to give it a little more definition, if that's desired. So these little guys, I call them skyliners. I put those on my website and also on my eBay site. And I think they're much less expensive because they're not made individually piece by piece. I think you can get some of these things they're like $100 net you like 30 of them or something. I can't remember how that goes, or 40 of them even. So yeah, cutting in here with the scissors and trimming this out, that would yield a nice tree for like a background along the edge of a mountain or something.
Right.
Yeah. These won't stand up. They're in for repair here. We're gonna go.
Roger,
Yes, sir.
have you been able to design a Scotch pine tree?
What kind of tree?
Scotch pine.
A Scotch pine tree. I actually have not heard of that species of tree before. Is that, where would that be predominant in the US?
Around Ontario, there's a bunch of them in different areas up in Ontario.
Okay. I've done ponderosas, specific again that was for another company that is like a stop motion film production kind of a thing. But I haven't really differentiated, honestly, too much into, okay, this is a Doug fir, this is a hemlock, this is a cedar. I haven't really dabbled in that too much. Maybe I'm just scared to commit. Once I go down that road, I'm stuck, right? Well, I got ponderosa, hemlocks, I'm not sure. So
I could show you one that I did, Rod, if you want to see it.
Sure.
Just a minute.
Now who's speaking? So I know who to go see here. Oh, wait a minute. I think I just passed. Oh, there we are. Now did I click on that? I'm a new Zoomer here, so I'm really bad. I wish I could see that larger. How do I enlarge that?
When he starts
Who was
talking again,
talking?
he should be
Got it.
spotlighted.
Yeah. So is that a Caspia material that you use?
Yes. Yes, German sepia, really.
This is Pat River.
Yeah.
He's talking.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and you could, I think one of the things about what I'm doing that might be most helpful is the tree trunks, because you can carve one tree trunk by hand and it takes you a little while. And if you really enjoy that, then you're set. But if you want to do more than say 10 or 12, then boy, that gets a real task.
A lot of work.
Tapering machine can really help. Then you can take, so I sell the trunks separately on the website, and then you can take trunks and approach them with your own system. So I've got the cedar, the Porterford cedar trunks are in 7 inches, 9 inches. I got some funny numbers here. 7 inches, 9 inches, 11 inches, 13 inches right off the shelf. I can make them larger. I think I do have some 15 or 16 inches in stock, and a couple larger ones than that in stock. And then I do have a little bit smaller size from bamboo. They're essentially made from round bamboo chopsticks. And I've got an 8-inch and a 6-inch. There's a few of the 8-inchers straight out of the box here. And so they're thin. They're quite thin. I don't know if you can see that at the base, but and And those are what I'm making the Skyliner trees on, essentially, with chopsticks. So it's a very hard material, the bamboo, so it doesn't break very easily, which is kind of nice when it comes to the thinner tops, but more difficult to drill holes in, and it's just narrower. So adding detail to these is more challenging, for sure.
Yep. Very good.
Okay. Should I put a tree together?
Yes, sir.
I find myself. How do I get back to? I'm such a poor zoomer. Okay.
Well, you're learning. Quick question. What is considered, I know in the Northeast, at one time, it seemed that the area was deforested because, you know, there was such aggressive things of logging and etc. So is that would the modern forest that's in the Northeast now considered a, I guess, second growth that you have on your website?
Well, yeah. So I call the thinner trunks, I call them second growth trunks. And that sort of differentiates, that's a term that I use to differentiate the purchaser so that they know whether they're getting bamboo trunks or cedar trunks. So second growth trees maybe perhaps being a little bit thinner, not quite as large in diameter as the old growth trunks, then this sort of correlates here with the bamboo trunks versus my cedar trunks. The thinnest cedar trunk I have is a 5/16. The bamboo ones, I think they're, I think those are 3/16. If I have that right. Not quite. I don't have anything that's a 1/4 inch diameter, unfortunately. And that's just because of the materials that are available to make these at the level that I'm working. So on the East Coast, I without doing some research and trying to find out more, it would be difficult for me to say exactly what would be the best trunk application size, diameter, height to meet a specific need like that. I'd really have to dive into the history and try to find out what was going on then, how tall the trees were, and what's there now. You were saying that they were
a little background on East Coast logging. Of course, you got to go back to the 1750s when the tamaracks were being clear cut up in Maine to make ships masts and spars, and there was a lot of deforesting going on way back when. And there to then is where Maine is now 3rd and 4th and 6th generation growth. But those tamaracks were in the 80 to 90 to maybe 100-foot range at maximum, but fairly slim at the bottom. They were 1.5 to 2 foot in diameter. They're kind of a long, spindly, but very, very strong to make masts out of. And then more recently, it's the pines are more, and the 70 to 80 foot range is what you see in the White Mountains and in New Hampshire and in Vermont, to give you just a feel for it. Yeah.
On some of those trees, like the tamaracks, we have something like that here nearby in Washington State, up in the Cascade Mountains. Well, it's called a tamarack anyway. And I've noticed that the trunk color also can be a little bit lighter on those trees, it seems, as compared to the Dougs, which also it depends on climate that day. Even just rain on a tree will make it appear darker. So darker, a gray sky versus more sunlight, that sort of thing. So there's just so many different variables when it comes to this, and the level at which one is trying to approach it to. You obviously spend a lot of time fussing over exactly how it is before you're getting on with making trees.
Well, observation is the best tool that you have available.
Right.
Yeah, I myself, I'm sort of like doing the Northeast during the, after the Civil War. So my assumption is that the trees at that, the forests at that time were trying to regrow themselves. So I'm assuming the forests had very short trees. But they haven't gotten to the point where they are now. So my assumption is that the trees at around this time might have been like, I want to say almost maybe the size of a locomotive, as tall as a locomotive, or a little bit taller. Not towering over them at this point. So
another approach, that you can do is you can cut the trunks. So you can buy these cedar trunks if you like those, and cut them. But then you of course have to drill a hole or something for something, kind of a mounting pin. I have both the toothpicks that I use, but with the nicer, larger trees, 9 inches, 11 or the 11s and the 13s. If I include some of these metal pins with the kits, and then I always put those in when I'm selling trees that I make with the larger trees, because they're so much more stable. So then if you're making shorter trees, but you wanted to use the cedar for that, you could cut it and then drill a hole and then use like your own metal pin or a toothpick. Half of a toothpick is what I use on some of the shorter trees. It seems like there's not quite as much potential for leverage on those. This is a 7-inch tree, or a tree trunk and in process here to build. If you try to trim this to make a shorter tree, like a 4 or 5-inch tree, you'll find that the diameter of the trunk there just gets so small, it doesn't have quite the same affect anymore. On the tapering machine that I showed you, it's more challenging to make short, fat trunks. That's not something that machine is going to like to do, because it will need to remove a lot of material in order to get to a set of trunks. So short, fat trees need to be made by hand carving, or with tools. If I'm working on a tree like a tree that needs to have a really wide base, the trunk, I'll typically just start with a block of wood and the bandsaw and rough it into shape with the bandsaw, and then progress towards using either a grinder or the sanding part of the tapering machine or something to go forth. But I'm not able to turn them automatically on the sort of mass-produced tapering machine.
all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Nice trees on that little horizon there, by the way. I've seen those. Those look good, in my opinion. If there's no other questions, I'll open a kit here and just kind of show you in essence how these go together. Before I'm not sure how much time we have left. Jim, are we okay on time to build a tree, or?
Yep, we're fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I'm opening there we go. 9-inch kit here. So I wanted to show it, like right out of the kit, what happens here. I didn't want to just grab materials out of my box or something. Okay, so on the 9-inch kit, we've got 4 of the cedar trunks. I'm going to pull those out. And there's a little funny message in here that says there's real wood tree limbs inside. So that's for the dead branches, if you choose to try to apply them. Got the instructions here, and then try to include an order form for those who like to order through the mail or just like to look and see what's available. Here we've got the green branch material, and then we've got the highlights packets here. Probably won't get so far as adding the highlights. I've got some half toothpicks here. So I'm gonna go ahead and open that up. Myself a half toothpick out. I've poured myself a little white glue over in this area here. I think I need a little more, actually. We've got some glue around these parts, by the way. Here we go. All right, so I've got my glue in my toothpick. I like to glue them in because that way when I'm moving the trees around, I don't have the toothpicks falling out all the time. And my basic setup then is to have the tree mounted in a block of styrofoam. I presume everyone has some styrofoam. We used to have a little block that we included in the kit, so don't do that anymore. But this green branch material, well, there's the dead branches there. Set those aside at the moment. More dead branches there. All right, a little tiny one. So this material, I have two styles of it actually. I have what I call thick and thin. And this all started because I thought that at the time that the larger trees would require thicker material and the smaller trees would use thin material. However, it became clear later that really it's the thin material that is suitable for almost all the trees. So I still, however, have customers that request the thin material and those that want the thick material. So I make both. And with the larger kits, like the 9-inch kit, the 7, the 9, the 11, and the 12, I include the thick material, which separates into two sheets. So go up just a little higher so you see my other hand. There we go. So I'm literally pulling that into two pieces. Think of it like a Scotch-Brite pad or something. I'm pulling it in half, right in the plane of the pad. Okay. I'm just going to put one of those aside. Pulling the material apart, it's nice if you do this over a tray or something because any excess green sawdust is going to fall out onto the table. And you might want to collect that and apply it later. So there's also little bits of coconut coir in here that you kind of got to, not the fibers, but the little stubby things you got to pull out sometimes. It's just something inherent with that material where I get it. I've made myself up a approximately 1-inch diameter piece of material here. And I've been forming it with my thumbs and pushing it together. I call that scrunching. And I'm adding with my thumbs here. I'm almost doing this just instinctively, almost adding a little bit of a bow to the branch as I'm working with it. And I haven't even placed it on the trunk yet. So now I'm going to put a little white glue on the trunk. And it's not critical how you do that. All it needs to do is eventually hold the material to the trunk, and the white glue will dry clear and you won't be able to see it. So it looks bad at the moment, but much later it will be fine. I take the material and slide it down the trunk. I kind of use my thumbs to impart that swoop. I'm sort of trying to give that an appearance of like gravity a little bit there. That bow of the branch is going down, but then coming back up, wanting to get some of that delicious sunlight. And I try to use smaller pieces. I don't go too big, especially at first. Now this is a West Coast type tree. It does depend on what you're modeling for sure. But in my trees, the ones that you're seeing here, I tend to try to keep things narrow, and I almost go for sort of a pear-shaped tree. This is kind of a basic approach, and that's again just my approach, and it really depends on what you're after. I'm always trying to do these sort of West Coast United States fir trees, and this is my interpretation of that, by the way, too, which may not be correct even today. Okay, so and then every once in a while, I just kind of like spin my tree and take a look at it and make sure it's kind of coming out. They don't necessarily have to be symmetrical, so I'm not going to use the word symmetrical. I see a lot of lopsided trees out there. But it depends on what I'm after. If I want a one-sided tree, then I'm checking it to make it one-sided. And if I want a relatively symmetrical tree, that's generally the ones that I send out in boxes. Then I'm rotating that to make sure that it has some symmetry for sure. Better go up a little bit. Right there. There we go. Symmetry right there. All right. And so I'm going to keep going with my build here. I'm going to move a little faster here. Okay, the white glue is still on there, so that's good. A little bit wider piece. And I'm kind of just working it over the top of the trunk. I don't want to break the top of the trunk, but eventually I can just kind of poke through. I also have these little awl tools, Japanese awl tools. They sell online. I carry a few of those on my website, but I don't use them too often. I find the material that I am producing now, I don't really need to use that so much. So they're still available. Scrunching. There's a good scrunch right there. Okay, grab some of that white glue on the way down. Okay, I'm halfway there. Putting off some material. Sometimes I just get the material already ahead of time. I pull all the pieces out I'm going to make first. Kind of break that up. Down here. This is nice. I've got a camera person volunteering for me today, so I can just focus on what I'm doing. A little larger piece here, and then I'm going to go smaller. So this would be my last big piece. There we go. Definitely got some branchiness there. I sure hope this is showing up on video okay. I didn't know exactly what background would be best. Probably something less busy would be good. So as I'm approaching the top of the tree, now this is where I think that the focus point, once this tree is on the layout, there's definitely a focal point there that's much more geared towards looking at the top of the tree than say the bottom of the tree. Just depends. So I do take my time here is what I'm getting at. And I will use fine little pieces of material. And again, I'm not too critical on the glue. I just give it a quick dab there. And I might even grab just some loose pieces lying around here and just sort of form them over the top. And I might even take the tree out of the styrofoam and work on it and hang a few pieces upside down. Now this trick, here's one I want to use sideways right there. And I know this is later going to collect some additional scenic turf that I'm going to put on there, the sawdust material. I'm picking up just individual coir fibers here and placing those on the top of the tree. And I could probably just fuss with this forever, but okay. And another thing I can do at this point is if I'm not satisfied somewhere, if I feel like the tree is a little deficient in material, I will just take a piece, form it with my fingers into a little bit of a bow shape and dip it right in the white glue there and shove it into the tree. So I'll come at it from the side now because the other pieces are going to support that. So that will allow me to add some fullness to this tree. We don't want any wimpy trees. Well, unless we do. We got to have control of that. All right. Control freaks in nature. Okay. So now there's a few things here I want to point out that are not going to be in the finished model, but I'm going to let this dry. And there's little coconut coir particle things here that I don't want hanging on there. And so, I can clip them off now, or I can just wait for everything to dry, and it will be much more robust and durable at that point. And then I can go back and do some editing and whatever I want to do. So does that show up? There's a little cardboard back here, so that helps. That's a basic 9-inch tree build right there. And that's something that I would, after I added some additional turf and again, the highlights. So I've got the highlight packets. I could ship that tree off. That would be a tree that I would be okay with selling that tree on the pretense that somebody wanted to buy it. Here's the highlight packets. I've got 2 colors that I include. One of them is kind of a darker, gosh, what is that? It's kind of a tannish brownish color. And then I've got another packet that has sort of a greenish and a yellowish in there. And these are also Port Orford cedar sawdust, but they are much finer than the material that I use to make the green branch foliage material. So I'm going to open up first the one here that has the darker color. And I would, let's see if I've got some, I still have some Aquanet. Those days are not that far past. Okay, now I'm going to put this in my fingers, actually. That's what I'm going to do. That'll give me the most controls. I have it pinched in my fingers. And I can go around. I'm going to hold the tree. I'm going to spin the tree and in my other hand, and I'm going to just kind of grind my fingers together, and I'm adding some highlights there. Okay. That one tree. This is probably difficult to see on the camera. A little bit more going on here. You could also do this with a spoon, and you could do it over a, I'm messing here, I'm working right over my table, but you could do it over a tub or a cardboard box or something to sort of save on these materials. All right, that's the plan. All right, so I've definitely added some of the darker highlight color there. That's sort of a dark mossy color. I'm going to come back at it with some, just a little bit of this lighter color here. There we go. I just control that thing. All right. So without adding any additional green material, I've added my highlights, and yeah, they sort of have an affect there. And the tree, of course, is still drying, so. That's the basic build on that tree. Again, there's just so many different ways you can approach it. I also have an airbrushable matte medium. If you have an airbrush set up, I could help a person to learn how to use matte medium, which sprays a little bit more easily than white glue does. You can also, there's various materials. If you followed any of Joe Fugett's painting with acrylics, he's got the acrylic painting guide. Can't recall exactly what that is called, but he's got a couple different economy thinners in there. And one of them includes ingredients like Armor All window cleaner, butyl cellulose, and water. And I use that a lot in an airbrush, and it works fantastic. I can dilute the matte medium. I can even do white glue with that and run it through a cheap, like a Harbor Freight airbrush or something. And I can do all kinds of stuff to the trees because of that. So thanks, Joe, for the formulas. The butyl cellulose is like a slick material, and it just sort of makes that fluid run right through that airbrush. So
just as a question, you made reference to Joe, his what was his name?
So Joe Fugate,
Gate.
model railroad hobbyist. And so I keep a mixture of, well, Joe doesn't know this, but I call it Joe's. Mixture of Joe's fluid here, which is basically the economy thinner that he has on his formulations for thinning acrylic paints like the Vallejo line or series of paints. And that's, you know, geared more towards like painting locomotives or rolling stock, that sort of thing. But I found that that thinner formula works excellent with matte medium. I can run it through a pump sprayer even, as long as I rinse out the pump sprayer relatively soon and don't let it dry in there. I get to use the pump sprayer again. Yeah, this stuff has just been great. And I just keep like a half a jar of it here or so around, and it's very slippery liquid. I think that's the butyl solve part of it, or that plus the Armor All. Let me just show you those ingredients. I just rave about this stuff. This is so good. So we've got the Armor All, butyl solve, and a little bit of the. And he's got the formula there. Just a little bit of the retarder. I find that I don't need to use them in exact proportions, but Armor All glass cleaner, which is alcohol free, and the butyl solve material, which is also purchasable on the internet very easily, and then the retarder. This is the Golden brand. I think that's all of the ingredients. Oh, there it is right there. And distilled water. All right. I've had good luck with that. What else can I help with? Also do little snag trees. Just holding in front of my shirt here. The cardboard, the white, again, the white. So hard to see, but I could probably do another 30 minutes on how to add the dead branches using the tree pitch. I use the tree pitch just to hold the branch in place before I add another material that makes a much stronger bond. And that other material is a mixture of, where's the Famo wood? I had it, here's the Famo wood right here. So this is another material that I'm a big fan, and you could do so much with this. You could do stumps, you can add bases onto trees with roots going into the ground with the Famo wood filler. This is the walnut, water-based walnut. Okay, and so that mixed with a little bit of the matte medium and then colored, and I like to use these, I've discovered these Waverly, these were at Walmart, but they're available from other stores as well. Waverly, this one, the color is called Ink, and it's a chalk-based paint. Very matte colored with the chalk affect in there. Everything with nature, you know, there's not too much that's shiny with regards to trees. So chalk based, I got the ink one here, and I've got another one called Truffle. So I just add a little bit of the black actually to a little bit of the Famo wood and the acrylic matte medium, and that's what I'm using to coat the joint where the dead branch attaches to the trunk. So first, it's a very rapid operation to dip it in the hot tree pitch, which needs to be vented, by the way, and then add that to the trunk, and then followed with this mixture. Let me just show you that real quick. Keep some in a little small container. Try to keep it from drying out, but I'll coat those little joints just with just a paintbrush and that mixture. Just kind of demonstrate how I do that. It's a little bit detailed work, but I've gotten quite quick at it. Just kind of moving around like this, covering anything that's shiny, because the tree pitch is essentially shiny. So I know if there's anything shining on there, it hasn't been covered yet with the material. But this is a Famo wood. This is a nice scenery material to have on hand and kind of play around with. And it's not too expensive. So that's a good one. And you could do a lot with that at home without generating any fumes, because there's no fumes associated with that water-based material, or none that I can tell. It's very low VOC, which is nice in a cramped space. All righty, well, I've probably used up more than my allotted time. What is any further questions about what's going on here?
Roger, you make some fantastic trees. You really do. I'm just amazed at the artistic touch that you bring to this hobby.
Well, I sure appreciate that. You know, that goes a long ways. I do this because I enjoy doing it, and it's just a huge ego boost when anybody says, "Hey, the trees look good," you know, then it makes me want to make more trees, actually. So that I do take that to heart. That's awesome.
That's great.
Appreciate that. So I really enjoy doing it. You know, it's not the kind of thing that you're going to get rich doing by any means, but it's probably about half my income at this point. I'm a registered nurse also. And I've kind of got my own nursing gig going on that I've put together. But so between that and making the trees, you know, it's all good. So yeah, I enjoy doing these, and there's so many different ways to go with it too. The hand carved trunks. There's a little bit larger trunk hanging around. There's what is this? This is a 16-incher, and this was probably done on that lathe machine that had the router on it. So you know, just it's fun to do big trees like this one, and take a little longer, but yeah, so I just really enjoy everything I get to do with it. So it's pretty lucky. I am pretty lucky.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking the time tonight to come and share the hobby with us and share your product, because they just are absolutely gorgeous. Well, I think we've come to a point.
Yes. And I've got the gift too. There's a prize with this.
Yeah, so I think we've come to a point now where we announce the winner of the door prize, which is one of your 9-inch old growth trees kit. And the winner is Russell McClure, McClure. Russell McClure. So Russell, I don't know whether you're on live right now with us or not. If you are, say hello. But I guess he's not. Well, Russell, okay. You have 24 hours to have one of your friends tell you that you missed being announced tonight, and to send me an email. Again, my email address is jimkello1, numeric 1, @gmail.com. That's JIMKELLOW, numeric 1, @gmail.com. In the body of the email that you send me, you're going to have to include this code. And the code is CSPS25. So that's C is in Charlie, S is in Sam, P is in Paul, S is in Sam, 25 is the code. And the winner's name is Russell McClure, McClure. Russell, the email that you send me has to come from the email address that you use to subscribe to our website. And I look forward to getting your email, and congratulations. I know you're going to have fun building this tree, and I'd love to see the finished product. And I hope you'll come on the show and share it with us, Russell, once you've got it built. And thank you, Roger, for donating the door prize tonight. I really do appreciate it. And it's www.coastmans.com. Roger, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. I really appreciate it. You guys have a great night.
You too. Now, next time, the 28th of August is coming Saturday. The door prize is being donated by Nick Santo. And Nick is donating some of his 3 different, in fact, of his decoder buddies. They're different sizes and serve different purposes. The featured modeler is Kareem Haskell. He owns Haskell Manufacturing Company in Taiwan. And he makes some beautiful, beautiful locomotives. And he'll be our featured modeler. So I hope that you've enjoyed the show tonight. I hope you learned something more important than anything else. Please visit our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe. And also check it out and find out some of the things that we've got coming up in the future, particularly the build-alongs and all of the detailed information that's contained about each one of them on our website. So thank you one more time for being here this evening, and happy modeling until the next show this coming Saturday. Night.